Good morning, sir. This is our member. This is the report of week 4, and our leader is Azriel Bautista. The group member is Ernie Salino Jr., Mark Lerie Summer, John Paolo Santiago, Jethro Puno, and Jeffrey Morelos.
Our topic is all about laws on human rights and the standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners. Slides number 2.
Concept and characteristics of human rights. Human rights are rights we have simply because we exist as human beings. They are not granted by any state. These universal rights are inherent to us all, regardless of nationality, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. They range from the most fundamental, the right to life, to those that make life worth living, such as the rights to food, education, work, health, and liberty.
Slide number 3. Slide number 3.
Sino ba una dyan?
Concept and characteristic of human rights. Human rights are universal. Human rights are universal because everyone is born with the possess that same rights, regardless of where they live, their gender or race, or their religious, culture, or ethical background. The universality of human rights is encompasses in the words of Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human rights are inherent. Human rights are inherent because they are not granted by person or authority. Human rights do not have to be bought, earned, or inherit. They belong to people simply because they are human.
Next, Jeff.
Ano na pre? Correct. Human rights are fundamental. Human rights are fundamental rights because without them, the life and dignity of man will be meaningless. Human rights are imprescriptible. Human rights do not prescribe and cannot be lost even if man fails to use or access them, even by a long time. Next.
Imprescriptible.
Tapos na pre.
Next, Mark Summer. Mike tol.
Open mic, open mic.
Mike,
Okay na.
okay na.
Human rights are inalienable. Human rights are inalienable. Human rights are conferred or on an individual due to have very nature of his existence. They are inherent in all individuals, irrespective of their case, creed, religion, sex, and nationality. Human rights are conferred to an individual even after his death. The different rituals in different religions bear testimony to this fact. Human rights are inalienable. Human rights are inalienable because they cannot be rightfully taken away from a free individual, and they cannot be given away or be forfeited. They should not be taken away except in a specific situation and according to due process. For example, the right to liberty may be restricted if a person is found guilty of a crime by a court of law. Human rights are indivisible. Human rights are not capable of being divided. They cannot be denied even when other rights have already been enjoyed, irrespective of their relation with civil, cultural, economic, political, or social issues. Human rights are inherent to the dignity of every human person. Consequently, all human rights have equal status and cannot be positioned in a hierarchical order. Denial of one right invariably impedes the enjoyment of other rights, thus the right of everyone to an adequate standard of living. Say right of health, or right of education cannot be compromised at the expense of other rights.
Human rights are essential. In the absence of human rights are essential and necessary. In the absence of human rights, the moral, physical, social, and spiritual welfare of an individual is impossible. Human rights are also essential as they provide suitable conditions for the material and moral upliftment of the people. Human rights are necessary for the fulfillment of the purpose of human life. Human rights are in connection with human dignity. All individuals are equal as human beings, and by virtue of inherent dignity of each human person, there should not be any discrimination on the grounds of race, color, ethnicity, gender, age, language, sexual orientation, religion, political or other opinion, national, social, or geographical origin, disability, property, birth, or other status. Human dignity should be maintained for in 1993, India has enacted a law that forbids the practice of carrying human excreta. This law is called the Employment of Manual Scavengers and Dry Latrines Prohibition Act.
Next.
Ikaw na yata niya.
Human rights are interdependent and interrelated. Human rights are irrevocable. Yung human rights daw ay nagtutulungan at magkakaugnay. Hindi daw ito mababago pagkat ito yung pinaka-rights ng mga tao. Next.
Next.
Ikaw ni.
Human rights are participative and exclusive. All people have wait.
Wait.
Nagloko.
Wait, interrupt.
Yan na. Hinay na.
Human rights are participative and exclusive. All people have the right to participate in and access information relating to the decision-making process that affect their lives and well-being. Human rights are never absolute. Man is social animal and he lives in a civic society which always puts certain restriction on the enjoyment of his right and freedoms. Human rights as such are those limited powers or claims which are contributory to the common good and which are recognized and guaranteed by the state through its laws to the individuals. As such, each right has certain limitation. Next slide. Next slide. Number 4. Puno. Next slide.
Classification of human rights. Economic, social, and cultural rights, the UDRH, and other documents lay out 5 kinds of human rights: economic, social, cultural, civil, and political. Economic. Social and cultural rights include the right to work, the right to food and water, the right to housing, and the right to education. Document like the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which was established in 1976, protect these rights. Conventions like the Convention on the Rights of the Child safeguard the economic, social, and cultural rights of the specific groups. As with all types of human rights, the state's responsibility is to protect, promote, and implement economic, social, and cultural rights. Specific examples in the category this include the right to work in a safe environment for a fair wage. Ito daw yung right nila na magtrabaho sa safe environment. The right to access media care including mental health care. The right to accessible education. Mais na pag-aaral. The right adequate food, clothing, and housing. The right to affordable sanitation and clean water. The right to take part in cultural life. The right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress. The right to social security.
Next.
Next slide. 5. Classification of human rights. Civil and political rights include articles from the first part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They state that people must be allowed to participate freely in civil and political life without facing repression or discrimination, while economic, social, and cultural rights are framed as rights a person is entitled to. Most civil and political rights are about protection from certain things like torture and slavery. Documents like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its 2 optional protocols outline rights such as the right to life, which is violated by action like death, by torture, neglect, and use of force. Kailangan ng isang akusado huwag masyado husgahan kapag walang proof or evidence na nilabag sa batas. Number 2. The right to freedom of expression, which is violated by restricting access to ideas and limiting press freedom. Bilang akusado, mayroon kang karapatan ihayag ang iyong saloobin, impormasyon na pawang katotohanan to be presented into court. The right to privacy which is violated by introducing on a person's sexual life or person data. Inihayag dito na kailangan pa alis na ng mga dayuhan na nagkasala sa ating bansa magkaroon ng maayos proses sa ating buhay. The right to asylum, which is violate deporting someone to a country where their lives at the risk. The right to a fair trial, due process, which violate by court that's not impartial and excessive delays. Kailangan protektahan ng bawat detalye ng bawat tao dahil kapag nakuha nila ito, maaari itong magamit sa ibang krimen tulad ng scam. The right to the right to freedom of religion, which is violate when someone is punished for following their beliefs or forced to adopt another religion. Kailangan galangin ng galangin ng bawat karakter ng bawat individual. Give respect, not judge. To not judge. To right to freedom from discrimination which violate when trials like race, gender, religion, etc. will use justification for action like being fired from a job. Kailangan magkaroon ng pre-trial para malaman if there is foul or mali sa judgment. If there is a problem, kailangan itong reviewin and present ng another na documents. Slide number 6.
Conditional limiting or suspending human rights. State of emergency. Under international law, rights and freedoms may be suspended during a state of emergency, depending on the severity of the emergency and the government policies. Most civil rights can be suspended, but basic human rights such as the right to life, the ban of torture, and freedom of religion cannot during state of emergency. The parliament cannot be disbanded. Next slide.
Pre.
Hindi mo, ito may gusto mo konti. Basic principles. Rule number 1. All prisoners. Hindi, okay na kami yan. All prisoners shall be treated with the respect due to their inherent dignity and value as human beings. No prisoner shall be subjected to, and all prisoners shall be protected from torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. For which no circumstance whatsoever may be invoked as justification the safety and security of prisoner staff. Parang meron ba? Staff, service provider, and visitor shall be ensured at all times.
Next slide.
Ah,
Mer.
United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners. Rule 2. The present rules shall be applied impartially. There shall be no discrimination on the grounds of race, color, sex, language, religion, political, or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or any other status. The religious beliefs and moral precepts of prisoners shall be respected. Kahit ano man yung katungkulan mo sa buhay, dapat walang nandi-discriminate ng tao, katulad ng sa kulay, kung ano ka man, sa sex, yung pananalita mo, o yung religion mo, lalo na yung paniniwala mo. In order for the principle of non-discrimination to be put into practice, prison administration shall take account of the individual needs of prisoners, in particularly the most vulnerable categories in prison settings. Measures to protect and promote the rights of prisoners with special needs are required and shall not be regarded as discriminatory. Kailangan ibigay sa kanila yung mga pangangailangan nila, lalo na yung bawat isa. Nang sa ganun, mas maprotektahan lahat ng prisoners.
Next slide. Mic, open mic, pre.
United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners. Rule number 3. Imprisonment and other measures that result in cutting off persons from the outside world are afflictive by the very fact of taking from this person the right of self-determination by depriving them of their liberty. Therefore, the prison system shall not accept as incidental to justifiable separation or the maintenance of discipline aggravate the suffering inherent in such a situation. Next.
Next slide. United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners. Rule number 4. Number 1. The purpose of of a sentence of imprisonment or similar measures deprivative of a person's liberty are primarily to protect society against crime
Wait
and
lang, tol. Jeff, pamute, Jeff.
to reduce recidivism. Those purposes can be achieved only if the period of imprisonment is used to ensure, so far as possible, the reintegration of such persons into society upon release, so that that they can lead a law-abiding and self-supporting life. Ang purpose ng pagpaparusa kapag nakakomit ng crime ang isang tao, binibigyan ito ng protection sa community and other industry to prevent discrimination. Ginagawa ang ganitong process to reintegrate, to be a better person, and not to discriminate them. Number 2.
Number 2. To this end, prison administration and other competent authorities should offer education, vocational training, and work as well as other forms of assistance that are appropriate and available, including those of remedial, moral, spiritual, social, and health and sports-based nature. On such programs, activities, and services should be delivered in line with the individual treatment needs of prisoners. Kapag ikaw ay nasintensya ng batas, may mga aktibidades ang mga gagawin sa loob ng kulungan. Yun ay para bigyan ka ng qualification to be better. They give you the educational, recreational activity and others to become relaxed and be better. Next.
Next slide. Next slide.
Just na yan, pre.
Yes. Last slide.
Rules for the treatment of prisoners. Last rule number 5, number 1.
United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for
Ops,
the
wait.
treatment.
Isa lang muna. Jeff,
Ako muna.
sige.
Rule number 5, number 1. The prison regime should seek to minimize any differences between prison life and life and liberty. That take to lessen the responsibility of the prisoner or the respect due to their dignity as human beings.
Number 2.
Prison administrations shall make all reasonable accommodation and adjustment to ensure that prisoner with physical, mental, or other disabilities have full and effective access to prison life on equitable basis. So, sinasabi lang dito na kailangan yung accommodation nila maganda, ina-adjust yung ensure that prison with physical na okay yung mental health nila, nang sa ganun lagi silang naaalagaan.
That's all, sir. Thank you, sir, from group number 4. Presenting week number... Anong week to?
4.
Week number 4. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you
po.
po.
Sir.